All right, we're here. Everybody's laughing at me. I love it. This is exactly how friendship community is supposed to be. We are going to have a little bit of a panel to talk about relationships. Eventually, we're going to get to dating. We're going to open today talking about what relationship looks like, what it looks like to walk through some of the harder things in community and relationships. So I want you to meet some of my community. So these are some of my friends. You probably know a few of them. This is Tanner Dalton. He's one of our worship leaders, also one of my best friends, and a guy I frequently beat in ping pong. But we don't have a ping pong table anymore.
It's not accurate.
It's not accurate. You're right. It's pretty 50-50. This is Chapel Claxton. She is like the associate pastor of our Hendersonville campus. That's not an official title, but it's what she walks in. We're both from Georgia. She went to UGA, all sorts of good things. You'll love her. She's fantastic. And then Ryan Glasscock.
What up?
Unbelievable, like
I don't know.
Football, Texas A&M.
Slightly. That's like
Loves Jesus. I know, right?
Yeah.
Lacrosse, the whole thing.
hyping
Passionate
me up
about
too
revival.
much.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good. So really glad to have them. We're going to jump in, and you have been so awesome about sending in questions around relationships and things that you want to know more about, and maybe some of those storms that you're weathering. And we want to talk about some of those questions today. And we don't claim to know everything, but we know some things. And even if just a season or a couple of seasons ahead of you, we want to try and give some wisdom as to how to walk through some of these things hand in hand in community and with Jesus. And so the first question that we really want to talk about is how to let go of some of those high school friendships that you walk through and the pain of that. And so I think, Ryan, you had a little bit on that.
Well, when the question came up, I just was reminded of back when, I was graduating high school, going into college. It's about like 6 years ago, I think. And I had a buddy who, sorry, I'm looking at the camera. I need to look up. I had a buddy who, we were best friends. He was a year younger than me. And I remember having a conversation the summer before I left. We were sitting in his pool, and I was talking. I was like, man, like, I'm about to leave for college. Are we still going to be friends? And we had a relationship that was built on, well, what we thought at the time was built on Christ, was built on being in church. Really, it was built on the atmosphere that we were in. But I was like, hey, man, are we still going to be friends after I leave for college? He goes, oh, yeah, dude, like, we're going to grow old together. Like, we're never not going to be friends. And I was like, let's go. Come on. That's my man. Anyway, fast forward like 2 months later, we got in like the smallest little argument. It wasn't even like, it was misunderstanding. I said something, he took it the wrong way, and I apologized. And anyway, I think he took that as an excuse to say, you know what, it'd be easier to say I'm done with you than it would be say like goodbye or, I want to continue this. And so for the next 3 years, we didn't talk, like from that point on, we didn't talk. I reached out to him all the time. And for the next 3 years, once a week, I would shoot him a text, call him, something like that, nothing. And I was heartbroken. I would spend so much time praying for him. And like I said, like 3 years later, I was still reaching out to him. I was like, man, this is going to be, and he started to like kind of live his life for the world, not so much for Christ anymore. And, man, I was heartbroken. And one of my buddies was like, hey, man, like sometimes you just got to let it go. And I was like, no, like this dude is like, I want to pray for him. I want him to come back to the church. And I realized like, man, like sometimes, the best thing is just to let it go. Because what I realized is I was so focused on that, I wasn't focused on where I was and the relationships I could have built, in college. So it was super tough, but also, man, a cool opportunity to learn a lot and realize that, hey, sometimes like, did I stop praying for him? No. But did I stop reaching out to him as much? Yeah, because I had to focus on other things. There's other relationships that could be built that I did build eventually that were incredible that I might have missed out on if I would have been so focused on this one relationship. So,
yeah, I think that's so good.
Yeah.
I think that's so good. And as seasons change and as we transition, it's true. Like new people move in and move out of your life and things like that. I love that. You tried to walk through that, and I think there's something to say for fighting for your friends. Like you want to be a good friend and fight for your friends, but at the same time, there's times when you do have to let go.
You just have to step away.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, it's letting go of friends, having friends transition in and out of your life. It's been more of a trusting that God's going to take care of it, like trusting that God is going to provide friends when I need friends, that God is going to provide an opportunity for a conversation for a friend that maybe we're transitioning out of that deep friendship. And so for me, thinking back in the I have a group from high school, and 10 years later, we still have a group text, and we're planning baby showers and things like that. And we don't talk all the time, but we have that deep connection. And the first couple of years in college, it hurt because we didn't live in the same city and things like that. But it all came back to, in my heart, I had to trust God that He was going to provide friends then in college, and then in the new city I went to, and even coming to Nashville, I knew that friendships were going to change because I didn't live near them. And so for me, it just comes back to like, okay, that stings a little bit. I love this person. I can pray with this person and for this person. But God's going to provide.
Yeah.
And I think of that verse, I have no idea where it is, but it says, as far as it's on you, like, be at peace with everyone.
Yes.
And I think a lot of times it is tempting, like your friend to like, I'm just going to burn the bridge because that's easier than trying to fight for it, or that's easier than being vulnerable and then being hurt. But you never know when you're going to move back to that place, and you don't want to have burned all those bridges, and you never know when God's going to give you the opportunity to minister to your friend who maybe has strayed or anything like that. So that's my little.
That's good. So let's talk about this for a second. So 2 things. You have to trust. This is a gold nugget that you just said. Like, you have to trust God with your friends.
Yeah.
That is a giant deal. To trust God with your friends.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so often I think we want to fix each other. We want to, hold on real tight to our friends or push them away or whatever it might be. And to be able to trust God with your friend, that He is the perfect friend, is huge. So talk to me about this. We had a question come in. It says, how do I rekindle a lifelong friendship with a person who doesn't really listen to me when I talk? I want to quit the friendship right now, but I can't let go. Like, I don't want to let go, but it seems like it would be easier. And so it's all circling around the same thing. Like, how would you navigate maybe a friendship that maybe is not completely toxic, but just has some signs of stuff that's not going well? Tanner?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, like, we've talked about trust. Like, I think you, when you're in a relationship that just has some issues, just to talk about not toxic. Help me understand one more time.
So, like, not toxic, like in the sense that somebody is abusing you or leading you to sin or something like that, but maybe they just have a hard time listening to you.
Yeah.
It's almost like a minor offense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think you just got to, your relationship, I think one of the things I wrote down as I think about this is that finding the right person, whether it's a friendship, whether it's an intimate relationship, is not nearly as important as being the right person. I think too many times we kind of like lean into relationships as our identity, right? Whether it's a friendship, whether it's a romantic relationship, and sometimes God can use those moments to remind us that we can't set our identity on that. He's already given us our identity. So and so leaning into who God is cultivating in us to be in this moment. And sometimes I think God gives us those moments in our life where we can kind of not step away from relationships, but like it's me and God time right now. At this point in my life, this season that I'm in, He wants to spend more time with me than I'm currently spending with Him. And sometimes relationships can get in the way of that, I think about friendships that I had coming out of high school. I had a good friend that I was roommates with in college. We were buddies in high school, came into college, and it's kind of like you're saying, like he started making some bad choices. And we were living in the same dorm, and I could have easily followed him in that path. And it hurt to kind of see him, like, he'd disappear for like 3 or 4 days at a time. And I'm like, his bed's empty. I'm like, it's hurting for him. And God used that time in my life to say, all right, I need to kind of just quiet myself. I don't need to be attached to this dude who's a buddy of mine, and I just need to pray for him. And I think that's it. I think the more you lean into God, the more you realize you have a voice in your friend's life by taking it to God.
Yeah, that's good.
That's really good.
It's really good. I love that, Tanner. I love that you like your natural bent is to pray for them. I mean, Orion said something similar, and so did you. And it goes back to that trusting God with your friendships. You know, I think it's interesting in Matthew. It talks about when you have an offense against somebody, to go to them and talk about it. And and then it's got a bunch of stuff that plays out. I wonder how often we have offenses towards someone that would be resolved if we just talked about it. Just had a conversation, right? When you have a friendship and you're like, oh my goodness, I need to get over this, or I need to push you away, or I need to run, or whatever it might be. Maybe you just need to talk about it. I know for myself, in a lot of the friendships that I've had, things can get under my skin, right? With any of us, right? Things can get under our skin.
For sure.
What happens if I leave that unattended to? It stirs up frustration, which stirs up bitterness, which stirs up division. And I have this little litmus test, right? Like if I think that something's gotten under my skin and maybe I'm like starting to step into bitterness, this is my test. If I walk into a room and that person is in the room and I want to do everything I can to avoid them, I have bitterness. That is my sign. I'm like, oh no, I gotta go find them. I need to deal with my pride and my bitterness. I don't even need to tell them that I need to forgive them for something. That doesn't work out. Maybe I need to ask for forgiveness, So testing yourself, looking at yourself, like you said, sometimes it's better to be the better friend, right? So that's good. All right,
also, real quick, I think your question of like, how do I like, what was the question? Like, how do I kind of move away from a toxic relationship or a toxic friendship?
Yeah, sure.
Kind of like touching on that. I was thinking about that just last night as you gave us some questions. It's just like, first, it's like, man, it's maybe helpful to define why it's toxic. Is it toxic because this person is actually toxic? Or is it something kind of like what you're saying is like, or am I just like, feeding something inside of me that's really, it's like, maybe it might not be them. It might be something inside me realizing like, they may be doing something that annoys me, but they have no idea about it. Like they don't really know what they're doing. And so it's like, I gotta define why it's toxic. And then, if it is toxic for, something to bring up towards them, like, hey, this is how you made me feel. It's like, man, you go with truth, grace, and love. You're honest about what, is wrong, and you're truthful about it. But also, like, leaders remove confusion. So you're just like, hey, this is how it made me feel. And I understand that it might not have been your intention, kind of having that grace in that. And then also just in love, just like saying like, hey, I still love you even though you're really getting under my skin.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Well, I know that the conversation around friendships and relationships is massive and far stretching and super deep and wide and all the things. But I feel like we're hitting the tip of the iceberg. I want to close with one more question that I think is kind of in the back of our mind. I know mine. One student typed in and said, is it okay, or how do I be friends with someone of a different faith?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Ooh, come on.
Yeah. I think my initial thought is like, yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I think sometimes as Christians, we close ourselves off and become like, oh, Christian only club. And I think that Jesus had friends that were of different faith. Jesus had friends who didn't believe in him or who turned their back on him or whoever. And I think it's good to have friends of different faith, and it's good to love them like Jesus did, and it's good to help them and have them help you and give advice and things like that. But then you also have to be rooted, and you have to be grounded in Scripture, in your relationship with the Lord, because things in friendships, things can get murky, and someone is saying, giving you some advice, and you're like, I don't know if that's what Jesus would say, but this person cares about me and loves me, and I don't really know what to do.
Good point.
So it's absolutely, but also you have to know where your truth is. You have to have that also that community of Christians around you that can check you and keep you accountable.
So good.
Talk about like God desires a relationship with us. I mean, it's cheesy, but Jesus needs to be your best friend, right?
Yeah.
Because like that's going to be your foundation.
It's true though. He's the best.
He is
best
the best,
friend.
right? But that's going to lay the foundation. So absolutely, there's stuff we can learn from people of other faith in their devotion. I mean, come on. Sometimes they're like. I had friends in college who were Muslim who spent way more time praying to than I do, right? So to learn that, geez, man, like am I that committed to God?
Yeah.
And you can learn from that, but you got to have Jesus as a foundation, or else
Absolutely.
you're susceptible to
Right.
the lies that the enemy can then begin to feed you. Like he will try to weed his way in any way he can, and so
that's good.
you've got to make sure that you've the garden has been tilled, the roots are healthy, the soil is healthy, and then friendships like that, you can then be a Jesus, influence on their life.
Yeah.
And then, gosh, we've heard stories of pastors who grew up Muslim, and Jesus got in their life. Well, how did that happen? It was through a friend.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So
Come on.
Jesus may be using you,
It's really good.
but you gotta be prepared for it.
Yeah. No, I think that if the question is like, should I be friends with people of other religions, other faith, or no faith? I'm like, I sure hope so, because then I wouldn't be here. Then
Wow.
the gospel would have never left the apostles. It never would have left the disciples.
Yes.
And so like
Come on.
I always like on the
That's
practical
really
side of it,
good.
I'm always thinking like for me like in college I went to Texas A&M, very much Christian. We call it the Christian bubble because it's like it's very easy to stay in it and not have any friends outside, which is really cool in some ways. Also, it's like, bro, you're missing out on your mission. And so for me, for a practical side of it, I find it helpful to kind of like DTR, define the relationship, okay, these are my friends who I'm running on, like we are running hard towards Jesus because we both have the same mindset. These are my friends who maybe they don't know Jesus. And so therefore, like, man, my goal isn't to be like shoving the gospel down the throat, but it's like, hey, I'm going to love you, but I'm loving you so that you can then know the ultimate love, that being Jesus. And so kind of defining like, hey, this is, like for me, it's like I had friends who were in an organization with me that we all were running towards Jesus. And then my kind of like, I hate saying like mission field, but it really was kind of like, hey, this is where, man, the Lord was doing work in my life through these guys, was like the lacrosse team. A lot of guys didn't know. Honestly, I don't know if any of them knew Jesus. But it was such a cool time where I was like, all right, here, I'm very much like, I'm loving these guys. I'm serving these guys, probably even more so. I don't know if more so, but it felt like even more so than I was with my other friends.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I wasn't spending more time with my lacrosse friends. The majority of my time was spent with like my community, because if I was spending, I think there's a quote out there. It's like, take the average of your 5 close friends, and that's who you are. Kind of, I don't know. Someone said it a lot better than and I did, but that's kind of the idea. Is like, man, I want to surround myself with like solid dudes who are running after Christ, but at the same time, it's like I still got a mission. Like I'm not just here beat bopping around. Like I got a mission.
That's good. Cool. I love that. You nailed it. What I'm hearing, and maybe as a capstone for that question is, if you have friends, it's absolutely a good idea to have friends that maybe are of a different faith.
Yeah.
If you do, and you believe that Jesus is your Lord and Savior, and that like his words are true, that he's the way, the truth, and the life, that nobody comes to the Father except through him, then you would do everything you could to share that faith, that love, that friendship, that best friend with God, with that person, because you want to be a good friend too.
That's good.
Yeah.
Cool?
Amen.
So good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for hanging out with us and my friends as we talked about relationships. We're going to talk more in the weeks to come.
Love it.
And so keep sending in questions and we'll keep trying to answer them. All right. Cool. Y'all are awesome. That was amazing. Gosh, y'all better not thought you were.
That's good.
That was good.
That was fun.
That was wild.